we've only got 3 episodes left. And so they're kind of dragging this out a little bit. We're doing the same thing week after week. Let's get to the next thing. Let's not zap people before they actually say something interesting in the show, just to keep the show going for another 3 episodes. Like, I had some high expectations for what I wanted from this episode, and they were not totally met. And then here we are. You're mad about it.
Yeah. Coming in every week and doing a review or analysis of an episode, we get a little bit more like, this episode was bad. This episode was good. This episode was bad. This episode was good. We obviously don't get the whole picture. Sometimes we might just have to experience the thing as a whole in order to truly understand it. And so we have to wait and be patient.
Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan.
Welcome, everyone, to Krypton to Alderaan. I'm Joey, your Star Wars lover, and with me is Royish Goodlooks, your Star Wars format guy.
Hello, Joey. Hello, podcast.
Hello, and we're the podcast that analyzes nerdy pop culture, but it's mostly Star Wars. In this episode, we'll be discussing The Acolyte, Episode 5, Night. But first, you know what? We made it.
We did it.
We are at 1,000 subscribers. We are past 1,000 subscribers, and it is all thanks to all of you. We put a lot of time and work and passion into this, and it's so rewarding to see so many of you hit that subscribe button, comment in the comment section telling us that you appreciate our content. It's really lovely to see. It's very exciting. We are very, very grateful to all of you who have watched and hit subscribed and liked our videos and commented. Thank you all so much.
All my hopes and dreams have come true.
Yeah, says the guy who's got like 20 million views on one video.
In all seriousness, I've never been more stoked to hit a milestone on YouTube. And like you've said, I've hit a few myself, but really fun to do with you. Feels really earned after so many years, like you're saying, so many episodes. I think this one is 120, episode 120 for us. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you to everyone who is new. And let's get into the show. Punch it, Joey.
Okay, let's dive right in. Royce, what's the format like of this episode? I'll tell you something I noticed because of you is that this episode, Night, was a very comparable runtime to the last episode. So you better have some nice things to say about consistent runtimes, or else cancel the podcast.
Yeah, so it still feels really short. We got a 34-minute episode, but the span from longest to shortest episodes for this 5-episode run so far is only 10 minutes. So it's still sort of consistent with the runtime, but it's really short. And in fact, this was the shortest 5th episode of any Star Wars series ever. Kind of a random fact, but normally it trends up higher towards the later half of the season. And we're kind of like trending lower. We're only 38 minutes on average for all of these 5 episodes, which is 8 minutes lower than the entire average for all of Star Wars shows. We're normally at 46 minutes per episode. We're at 38 minutes on average in this season so far. So we're kind of missing a whole extra episode. 5 episodes times 8 minutes, 40 minutes. And that would even be longer than the last 2 weeks. This is such a dumb gripe, but this is the streaming era we live in where there's no rules for how long an episode can be. But especially coming off of these last 2 episodes, last week being short, this week being short, they seem like they were written together. I think some of the writing staff has said they were meant to kind of be put together. So maybe back to back, they play awesome. They're like 2 tracks on an album that like bleed in to one another, you know? The fade out is the fade in of the next episode, which we were really anticipating this week's episode because last week left off on such a cliffhanger. This is the most stoked I've been waiting for an episode to come out because you're like, I gotta see that next scene. That was last week's conversation, you know? And we did get a ton of great action. The lightsabers, boldly killing off main characters swapping places. And now we've only got 3 episodes left, but we still haven't revealed everything fully. We got that scene with Saul where he said, I'll tell you back at the ship, which was verbatim what he said last episode. And so they're kind of dragging this out a little bit and also taking away some potential runtime from us. I had some high expectations for what I wanted from this episode, and I'm a little bit conflicted on how it unraveled, how the thread unraveled in this episode.
I don't know if I could feel any more different. No, I mean, it's definitely noticeable that the episodes are short, especially with these episodes back to back. To borrow a phrase from my friend Andy over at Galactic Core, whose podcast I was on last week, talking about last week's episode of The Acolyte, I'm not fussed, not necessarily fussed over these two episodes being back to back instead of being one solid episode. I have to check myself when thinking about streaming things compared to like the way TV used to work.
Yeah, it's just different now. Yeah.
Right. And I'm very used to having things all at once. So much stuff drops all at once. We can binge it. We live in the age of binging. And I don't mean to speak for anyone else. I just certainly know how I get with that in my head and have to check that. Yeah, sometimes classic TV shows had a mid-season thing where it would be this big grandiose thing. It would be an hour-long episode or whatever. But just because this isn't that, just because these two episodes were not one big episode, does not make them any less good in my mind. So I'm not necessarily fussed by it. I know I can go back and watch them sequentially. It'll be like watching one big episode. And it didn't take away anything that I enjoyed about these episodes, which was Star Wars. This was so Star Warsy. That's my first note in my notes about this episode is this is so Star Warsy. We open up exactly where we wanted to open up, this lightsaber battle between the Jedi and the Red Blade, who they use the word Sith, which is also very cool. Last week, I said that Day was my favorite episode of the series so far. I think that this ties with that for me. I love the action. I love the choreography. I love the reveal, even though Qimir was maybe pretty obvious that he was the guy. But I also like that they might be tricking us into what the mysteries are. Initially, we thought the mystery was Mae and someone who was killing Jedi. They revealed that right away. Now the mystery is the man in the mask. They revealed that halfway through the series. I think there's a thing here where like, it's not what you think, like we said at the beginning. That's what Leslie Headland said. So maybe there is more mystery to be had. But in this episode specifically, lightsabers, man. Lightsabers.
You cannot argue with this is the Edna Krabappel. Come on. Lightsabers trumps everything in Star Wars. Yeah, the action there was great. I want to push back on one thing you said. Now halfway through, we're revealing it. We're kind of more than halfway through. This was episode 5. So this should be over the hump. Now we only have 3 episodes left. We still now have to do the flashback to get context. We're going to maybe reveal Qimir's side of the story to Osha. We'll reveal Sol's side of the story to Mae and get everyone on the same page. I think that's going to be next week. And then we can have a banger 2-part finale. Stereotypically, high expectation, want something of that nature. But if those are only going to be 34-minute episodes, that's not a lot of time. I wouldn't care if it's only 30, 40 minutes an episode, if it was 10, 12, 16, whatever. We're going to be crunching something in at the end, but subvert my expectations. If there are other big reveals to be had, if Qimir has a master that he's trying to please and he's actually the pawn, I'm trying to figure out why his conversation with Sol kind of confused me a little bit. He's saying, I want to be free to wield my power. I want a pupil. Like he's giving this kind of oppressed dialogue, kind of similar that the witches gave. It's also just kind of like, I don't know, can't you just have the Force and just like be off in the world? But he's like, I'm going to take a Padawan. I'm going to take an Acolyte and she's going to murder a bunch of Jedi. And he's stirring the pot. He's saying the Jedi make all these rules. And it's like, well, you're the bad guy, Qimir. And you admit that you're the bad guy. So I'm trying to see like why we would empathize with him. And he's kind of lovable in the way that he's got the Joker quality where he's mocking all the good guys, which is a great way to write the bad guy character. But I'm not quite sure I see his side of the story because you're just going around and murdering people. It's not like the witches that are like, bro, we're on our backwater planet just like being us. You came to us. I'm not sure what Qimir's issue is, but he does seem to know Osha and Mae and Sol's backstory, which maybe that's part of the mystery. Like, how is he connected?
Yeah, we still don't know enough. The witches, to your point, were off on Brendok, living their lives, doing their thing. And the Jedi showed up. And then they wound up dead, which she saw as a child. And they were taking her sister away. So the Jedi are not, I still don't believe that they're the good guys here. I love villains and I'm really fascinated by the Sith. But there's stuff here that the Qimir character said wants to be free to wield his power as he sees fit, because it's clear that the Jedi just go out and are saying, you're not allowed to do this. As Force users, you're not allowed to train children. This era of Jedi has a stronghold on the policing the Force. This is what rises from that. The Jedi symbolize at this point some level of oppression. You're not allowed to do certain things with your own power, which, yes, within reason, maybe like don't go off killing people or manipulating things in certain ways. But like the witches weren't safe from the Jedi. And so Qimir is taking action. Obviously, he's evil. But that's not like an unrealistic thing to be like, the Jedi don't get to make the rules for everyone in the galaxy. And that's what they are trying to do. We know that the Sith crave power. We know that every Sith, even like the active apprentices, also want to take apprentices and pass on their knowledge. And they believe that that then elevates them to the next rank. There's so many different facets here, which is what I really love about this. It's not just like Jedi Sith. It's like this character, he knows what happened to those witches, whether he was there or not. He says, I want to wield my power as I see fit, which very valid to some extent, I think. But then from the Sith side of things, he wants power. He wants to take on a Padawan. He wants to find the right one. That's when the really interesting stuff for me starts to happen, where it's like he's seen the Jedi oppress people who have the Force. And so this is the result of that.
Maybe Qimir had a master that shows up at that coven at the same time everything goes down and is there in defense of the witches or something. Wild speculation, but why would Qimir take that stance? I could see Mae feeling that way. You took my sister from me. You burned down my village. You killed my family just because we were doing our pagan ritual. And what did we do to you? You invaded. I can see that side of Mae's story. So Qimir must have some kind of similar backstory involved with that, or maybe a separate sort of thing. Maybe he was in his own tribe of people that were also oppressed. And he knows this is what the Jedi do. I don't know. You're swaying me a little bit there. But again, he's evil. Mae is way off the deep end. I mean, I don't want to jump too far in the conversation, but like, I'm having a hard time getting behind Mae. I love Qimir as a bad guy, but I'm not behind his ideals quite yet. But I do love Sol. Dude, he gets so angry in the fight. He's yelling. There's a scene where Jecki is yelling too. I kind of love when people fight and they're just like, they give in to that primal nature. And of course, Sol almost kills Qimir, which I was talking with my brother and he was like, why didn't you kill all the other Jedi? I think it's fair that he could kill Qimir after that. What's the rules then? And it's interesting. Osha stops Sol from doing it. Sol does come back. He does ground himself like, no, this isn't what a Jedi would do. Unlike Anakin in Revenge, I shouldn't have done that. It wasn't the Jedi way. But Palpatine's like, no, do it. Some cool parallels there to other things that we've seen in Star Wars, but maybe from sort of a different point of view.
There's so much here. All the stuff that we've seen happen already in the show is not an accident. We could take it all the way back to the text that was on screen before the premiere in terms of like, oh, did they mean Mae or did they mean this Qimir character? There are threads to pull on there that I think are really interesting. And the idea that maybe Mae joined him because they had the same backstory. He manipulated her into thinking so. Specifically with that scene with Sol and Qimir and Osha stopping Sol, Osha might be the most pure character. Where we have been thinking Saul's like the good guy Jedi, and Osha's not necessarily a Jedi anymore, but he's got a history. Sol has secrets. He covered stuff up. And in that swing where he goes to swing at Qimir, if he kills this guy, Saul's secret stays a secret, and the secret that the Sith have returned stays a secret. But Osha stops him because Osha is the one who has faith in the Jedi. She said it herself. And so that is about to get ripped away. She had the plan to get him out of there with the bugs, but she stopped her old master from killing this guy who may become her new master because she has such faith in the Jedi. And the more faith you have, the harder you're going to fall when you realize that they did some shady stuff to you and your family in the past. And so I think this is setting up a very powerful moment there between Qimir and Osha.
I love that take that Osha is actually the soul in this conversation. Sol's got this backstory that's shady, Osha, she's just along for the ride. It's not her fault, the way things are going in her life. She's been kind of forced into some very horrible circumstances. But I love this idea that actually she is the lightest Jedi. And, she's starting to sense more things. She heard her name. I don't know if that was like Mae calling to her or the woods or a Sith or her mother or something, whatever that was. She is sensing things, that she says in the last episode to Sol in a way that I haven't been able to before. She's becoming a Jedi again, but now, of course, she's off with Qimir. Hopefully she can stay that way and not give in and be resilient. Again, we made the connections with Force Awakens last week. Kylo captures Rey, but Rey's like, I'm not going to give in. And actually Rey starts turning back on Kylo, starts reading his mind. You're afraid you'll never be like Darth Vader. So that would be great if Osha can resist the dark side, because Mae cannot. Mae is like, she's more conflicted about her life than, the Star Wars fandom is about this damn show.
Yeah, Mae was willing to give it up. Mae says, my allegiance is to my sister. And when Osha's allegiance is still not to Mae, that's when Mae decides to, whatever she's going to do with Sol, whether it's like record his confession, get him to confess and record it to play for, there's so many different ways it could go there. I'm not sure she's still on the track to killing this guy without a weapon. She was willing to turn away. She just wants to be with her sister. And she's still this kind of very clingy, insecure person who just wants her sister to choose her over this other group of people. And Osha's still not there. And Mae believes that it's because Osha does not know the whole story. And now Osha's going to know the whole story. But I think it's pointing more to Osha falling even farther than Mae here, because she became a Jedi and she has faith in the Jedi. And so she has the opportunity to fall so much farther. And maybe Mae's going to be the one to try to bring her back from that. We have said that we wanted to see maybe something flip-flop here, and we got that. Osha going with Qimir and Mae going with Sol. And so the masters here have swapped apprentices, whether they know it or not. And I think we're going to get the same conversation happening between each, with Qimir revealing the truth to Osha and her having to make a choice there, and Sol admitting the truth to Mae and her having to make a choice there. When she finally hears the truth from the Jedi, does she kill him or does she try to use that information to get her sister back? I love this, that they swapped apprentices and we see some cool stuff like Qimir healing Osha at the end. I'm really excited to see where it goes next, but it didn't happen maybe exactly the way I thought it would.
Boy, you said it, Chewie. It didn't happen the way I thought it was going to happen. The swapping of the places is cool because now we can see everybody's opposite side of the story and we can all get on the same page. But I don't want to see Osha go down the dark side path. And I don't really see Mae being like redeemed because she's really super far down the path. The thing that really was not working for me is when Mae said she was going to surrender to the Jedi. She's attacked by Jecki, so they start fighting. She didn't do, what we were talking about last week. The like, no, I didn't do it scene. Jecki thinks that Mae killed Kalnaka, even after they had just seen the Sith with the red blade. That was a little disappointing that Mae wasn't like, whoa, chill out. Like, I'm on your side. Like, even though I did some things, like, she said she was going to surrender. She doesn't surrender to Jecki. She doesn't surrender to Sol later. Like, Sol, Osha, and Mae could have had a conversation there. Again, like you said last week, Sol says, I'll tell you everything. Zap. And then he's on the ground. And it's like, oh, we did that same darn scene last week. You're drawing that out. And for a third time, Mae could have surrendered to Osha. And they could have, they just kind of keep rehashing that. So that drama of how that unfolded, I didn't fully appreciate. You really were selling me, though, with the, Osha goes down the dark path with Qimir when she sees that side of the story. I don't know how Mae and Sol are going to come to terms with each other, but this is just one of those things we don't know, and we have to see what happens in the next couple episodes and what they reveal to us, because that's the mystery story. But we went a little bit more of OC drama this week for me, and that's kind of what was not working, although I did love all the lightsaber stuff. The lightsaber jamming is so freaking cool. So I'm glad that you were selling me on some of this positive spin on where they're taking Osha and Mae, because that was the biggest issue, aside from maybe the runtime, small gripe on the formatting. Where they were taking those characters was starting to kind of irk me because we're doing the same thing week after week. We know Mae is off the deep end. She's emotionally unstable, and that's clear. but let's get to the next thing. Let's not zap people before they actually say something interesting in the show, just to keep the show going for another 3 episodes. Like, we could have done that a little earlier.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. Now I'm going to push back.
Do it.
With the force, with my feelings.
I've always been terrible at blocking.
Yeah. I see us like getting very wrapped up in the analysis sometimes, and we might spend 5 minutes on a 30-second scene.
Yeah.
But if this were happening in real time, some of the characters don't have a lot of time to make a decision or stop another character from doing a thing. Mae was going to turn herself in. She gets to Kelnaka's hut and she sees him dead. She's in there with the dead body, which is, I think, why Jeki accuses her of killing Kelnaka, because the Sith was behind them. Mae was with the dead body, but she's also killed 2 people. So this Jedi is attacking her. She doesn't trust the Jedi. She thinks the Jedi stole her sister and murdered her family. And there's not a lot of time to have a conversation. This girl just drop kicked her. And then the girl accuses her of killing her family. And that's when she really like flips out.
Oh yeah, to arrest her for killing, that was a little over the top. I am a Jeki stan, but for her being like, because you murdered your family, like, okay, slow your roll.
Yeah, I think that's all part of it. Jeki accused Mae.
Well, she was attacked. Yeah.
But she also wants to get out of there. She was going to turn herself in until this dude showed up. And now she's like, no, screw that. I just got to get out of here. I got to get my sister out of here in any way I can. And yes, he gets taken away and then she stuns Saul. But she knows Saul stole her sister, lied to the galaxy maybe about stuff. And he can't be trusted in her eyes. So she stuns him before he can say anything. They also seem to believe that the Jedi can make you do stuff and can read your mind and put thoughts in your mind. So it's unsafe with him there. So I didn't like take it as anything story-wise wrong when she's making all of these decisions. And she just wants to be with her sister. That's all she's ever wanted. That's why she was going to turn herself in the first place. She stuns the guy who stole everything from her and then tries to have a talk with her sister about being like, choose me, don't choose them again, choose us, choose your family. And that just hits on so many levels for me. Like, we talk so much about wanting the emotional storytelling. That scene was very emotional to me. I talk a lot about how Star Wars is all about like found family. Now, Osha had a found family and Mae maybe kind of also did, but not a very healthy one. And so she has just been on a quest to find her blood family. She still cannot understand why Osha does not want the same thing as her, which is the reason for everyone's downfall when she was a child. She is still confused about why they don't want the exact same thing. So instead of surrendering and then having to go with the Jedi, she pushes back. And then I think goes with Saul in order to get him to admit what he's done. And what I'm really hoping for, this is definitely a stretch, but what I'm really hoping for is a really emotional scene between Saul and Mae, whether he knows it's Mae or not, of him admitting the wrong things that he's done, and then maybe Mae existing in that emotion and some level of forgiveness there. I really hope it's not that Mae just like takes him out because of the damage he's done. I would love a very emotional soul scene, crying, admitting what he's done. I think he's a terrific actor and we could definitely see that from him. And then having Mae feel some, maybe not understand because it might be that the Jedi murdered her entire family, but at least have some reaction to that emotional scene. We get a scene and we get a line of dialogue that's so prequel era. They brainwashed you. They turned you against me, is what Mae says to Osha. And that is so wrapped up in all of this. There's so much meaning to that conversation in Star Wars. It made me feel so much like this is what is being felt by 2 people who love each other from opposing sides. They don't believe each other. They can't trust each other. They just want each other to want the same thing and they don't. And so it gets so complicated. I really love that connection to Revenge of the Sith with Mae saying, they turned you against me.
She's got a ton of Anakin energy. If you're not with me, then you're my enemy. And that's exactly how she treats her sister immediately after she says, I love you. Then I'm going to force push you and abandon you on a planet and tell your master that you're gone. I don't know why Soul wasn't like, we're going to look around for her. She's just gone. And also she's got the tattoo, even though she cut her hair. So Saul's going to immediately, he's going to say, give up the shtick. I know who you are.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot wrapped up in here. And again, Mae is very emotional and has been taught to use that emotion for darkness. So she reacts. She pushes back her sister because her sister's not on her side at all. Her sister's like, I have faith in the Jedi and I love their rules and I'm going to arrest you and take you back. I mean, she did kill 2 Jedi. So there is that. I agree with what you're saying about Saul, but what I really, really didn't like, what also continues to turn me against these Jedi and against Saul, is that there was no second thought about recovering the bodies of all of the Jedi killed during that fight. They just leave. And I don't think that's an accident, or at least I'm not going to read it as they just didn't want to write that scene or whatever. I'm going to read it as very purposeful that the Jedi are so far gone and he's in his own little world and he's dealing with his own grief, but there was no consideration about getting these Jedi a respectful end by bringing them back to Coruscant. He just left them in the woods for the bugs to eat. That's the part of the episode that made me dislike the Jedi the most. I'm on no one's side now. I'm on no one's side. I'm just going to go out in the galaxy and start my own little coven of witches.
Yeah, that one doesn't make much sense. That would have been a great moment to parallel with the Bad Batch, we're going to collect them all, but they're traitors. Yeah, but they're our brothers. And those are literally your fallen Jedi brothers. So
you brought them there, Saul. That's a very powerful moment when Saul's like, she was a child about Jackie. And Qimir's like, you brought her here, man. You brought them all there, dude. And now you're just leaving their bodies in the woods. Not cool.
I'm a little bit worried for next week because I'm now at the point where I'm like, I wish it was going this way and not so much this way. And you've made a lot of great points about how they're framing Osha versus Mae and Qimir versus Sol. And I do think that there's potential there. I'm trying to be generous with the show as we are on the podcast here, but I'm getting to that point where I'm like, that bugged me. I'm yelling at the TV a lot more than I have in previous weeks, which makes me a little bit less excited for the next couple episodes, which is a little bit of a bummer. So I'm struggling with that.
Yeah, we can be generous and also maybe not like a thing all that much. And maybe this was the episode of that for you.
I had expectations. I had expectations for this week and they were not totally met. And then here we are. You're mad about it.
Yeah. Which, I mean, what I think we do well here is talk about something and then talk about why it did or didn't work for us with evidence-based, which is great. What I really like about this conversation is that I can come back at you and be like, well, I actually really liked that part and here's why. So we inevitably have expectations. And if some expectations are not met, it kind of detaches us from the show. Sometimes we might just have to experience the thing as a whole in order to truly understand it, which coming in every week and doing a review or analysis of an episode week by week, we obviously don't get the whole picture. And some things just exist better as a whole picture. And so we have to wait and be patient. And in an age of streaming, again, where we're not used to that and we can binge stuff, when stuff's coming out week to week, we get a little bit more this episode was bad. This episode was good. This episode was bad. This episode was good. Whereas once you put it all together, it makes a lot more sense. You have all of the pieces of the puzzle. I think doing it week to week lends itself really well to a mystery. We kind of have to get used to that again, that way of watching television. So we do have to give it some time sometimes, and that's it.
No, you're totally right. The show is a mystery. There's mystery left to be revealed. We can all have our own subjective opinions, whether we like it or not. But the writer's job over the next 3 episodes is to reveal some of that mystery, maybe set up more if there's going to be a season 2, even though I've heard that this is going to be kind of self-contained. And hopefully, once it's revealed, now I get it. And maybe we can go back, watch it again, reorder the episodes so that you're with the Tusken Raiders, and then you're fighting against the Spice Runners.
Pikes.
The Pikes. And then it makes sense right after Kai Patterson does his edit of it.
Listen, I don't make the rules. The writers do. And the writers say that I like this show. So there.
All right, listeners, we got to keep this conversation going. We would love to hear from you. Leave your comments here on YouTube and make sure to subscribe, because if you're not with me, you're my enemy. And we already got to 1,000 subscribers, but we'd love to pack on a few more. We really appreciate you tuning in this week, and tune in next week for more nerdy pop culture, but mostly The Acolyte for at least 3 more weeks. Thank you for listening to the show today. I've been Royce.
I don't have a name.
And we've been Krypton to Alderaan.
I guess Kofar again.
Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan.
Positive feelings about the High Republic in 5, 4, 3. Should we do that? Should we put like a spoiler warning, but like a positivity warning?
Yeah.